So we continue breaking down the definition here. So like I said, it's applied across the enterprise, not just in finance or operation, but everywhere. And fifth, it's designed to identify potential events, being proactive about what could happen, not just reacting to what has happened. Six, it aims to manage risk within risk appetite, keeping risk at levels the organization has chosen to accept. And finally, it provides reasonable assurance, not certainty, but reasonable confidence that the organization will achieve its objectives. Now, let's reinforce and expand on this definition with some additional perspective. Risk management, then, is a systematic approach to identify, assess, and understand risk in order to guide further appropriate management decisions and action. The key word here is systematic. We're not relying on gut instinct or intuition. We're actually using structured methods and frameworks. So this is an important mindset shift. Risk management means more than preparing for the worst. Many people think of risk management as purely defensive, building bunkers and planning for disasters. But let's only have the picture. Remember what we said earlier, risk provides the basis for opportunity. Effective risk management also means taking advantage of opportunities to improve products and services or reduce costs. For example, consider how Netflix approached the risk of streaming technology disrupting their DVD by mail business. Rather than just defending their existing model, they recognized the opportunity in that risk and transformed themselves into a streaming giant. They took a calculated risk that ultimately created huge value. So when you think about risk management, think about it as a tool for both protection and growth, shielding the organization from threats while positioning it to seize opportunities. So if you look at this comprehensive diagrams, you know, it looks very complicated, almost overwhelming. But that's actually the point. It shows just how interconnected and multifaceted risk management truly is. At the center, you see risk management surrounded by various components like risk assessment, risk controls, management arrangements, risk evaluation, risk identification, and risk communication. Notice also the cyclical process on the left. Identify risk, monitor and report, assess risk, and risk handling. This cycle never stops. It's continuous and iterative. On the right side, you see the various factors that influence risk. You have complexity, technical factors, schedule, cost control, compliance, organizational factors, and a lot more. These represent the many dimensions where risk can emerge. The bottom portion shows risk controls, from risk avoidance to risk reduction, to risk transfer, to risk acceptance. It also highlights the importance of risk communication and how different stakeholders perceive and influence risk. What I want you to take away from this diagram is to appreciate the interconnected nature of risk management. It's not a linear process with a clear beginning and end. It's a dynamic, ongoing discipline that touches every part of an organization. Now, Let's simplify. So what is the fundamental purpose of risk management? The purpose is to minimize the potential harm of a risk event by implementing strategies and actions to control and minimize risk. That's it. At its core, risk management exists to protect value, essentially to ensure that when bad things happen, and they will happen, the damage is contained and manageable. But let me add one more detail. Minimize doesn't mean eliminate. So we can't eliminate all risk, nor would we want to. If a world without risk would be a world without any progress, innovation, or reward. So the goal is to bring risk down to an acceptable level, essentially levels that align with our risk appetite and risk tolerance. But the goal is never to eliminate all risk. Think about driving a car. We can't eliminate the risk of an accident, but we can minimize it through seat belts, airbags, speed limits, driver training, and traffic laws. We accept a residual level of risk because the benefits of driving outweigh the remaining dangers. The same logic applies in business. We implement strategies and actions such as controls, policies, procedures, insurance, hedging, and so on to reduce risk to acceptable levels while still pursuing our objectives. So, why does this all matter? Why should organizations invest time, money, and talent in risk management? Well, our goal with risk management is to minimize harm. So that sounds obvious, but it's actually deep. Every organization exists to create value for shareholders, customers, employees, and society. Risk events destroy value. So effective risk management protects that value. By being able to manage our risk, we become safer, not just physically safer, but organizationally safer. So the organization becomes more resilient, more stable, better able to face storms and emerge stronger. So recall from earlier that risk is determined by three factors: hazard exposure and vulnerability. We cannot always control the hazard. We can't prevent earthquakes or stop competitors from innovating, but we can control our exposure and reduce our vulnerability. For example, a company can't prevent a pandemic from occurring. That's a hazard. But it can reduce its exposure by diversifying its supply chain across multiple regions. It can reduce its vulnerability by building remote work capabilities and maintaining financial reserves. So risk management then gives us the tools and frameworks to systematically address exposures and vulnerability, even when we can't control the underlying hazards. So let's summarize then what we covered today. So we explored the essential vocabulary of risk management: risk profile, risk appetite, risk perception, risk attitude, risk acceptance, risk capacity, risk retention, and risk tolerance. We developed an understanding that these terms allow you to communicate precisely about risk within your organization. When we defined risk management as a systematic, organization-wide process for identifying, assessing, and responding to risks and opportunities, we also emphasize that it's not just about defense, it's about enabling smart risk-taking that creates value. Finally, we discussed the fundamental purpose of risk management: minimizing harm while pursuing objectives. We become safer not by avoiding all risk, but by understanding and managing our exposure and vulnerability. In the next lecture, we'll continue exploring why risk management matters and dive into the risk management process itself, the specific steps organizations take to identify, assess, and respond to risks. Thank you for your attention, and see you in the next lecture.